I have $1.43. Is that enough for soup? The little girl's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like silence breaking. I wasn't supposed to hear it. Men like me don't stand in places like that, not long enough to notice things that small. But I did, and for a second, everything else stopped. The low hum of conversation, the clink of ceramic bowls. Even the weight of the watch on my wrist seemed heavier, ticking louder than it should. I turned my head just slightly, enough to see her. She couldn't have been more than 6. Thin jacket, too light for the cold. Small fingers curled around a few coins and a crumpled dollar bill. Like if she held them tighter, they might turn into more. The woman beside her, her mother, I assumed, looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles, shoulders tight, the kind of tired that doesn't go away with rest. She reached for the girl's hand quickly, gently, but with urgency. "Lily, it's okay," she whispered, her voice careful, like she was trying not to let the world hear them falling apart. "We'll find something else." But the girl didn't move. She kept looking at the menu board above the counter, like hope was written somewhere between the prices. $1.43. I've seen men spend more than that on the tip they leave behind without thinking. I've spent more than that on things I don't even remember buying. But the way she held those coins, it wasn't money. It was everything. The cashier hesitated. Just for a second. That tiny pause that tells you the truth before words do. Not enough. The mother saw it too. Her jaw tightened, and she pulled her daughter back, already apologizing, already shrinking herself smaller than the moment. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "We didn't realize." Realize. As if hunger was a misunderstanding. I should have looked away. That's what I've trained myself to do. Look forward. Keep moving. Control what matters. Ignore what doesn't. But I didn't. I kept watching. The girl finally lowered her hand, the coins making the faintest sound as they shifted against each other. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. And something about that sound stayed with me longer than it should have. I felt it in my chest before I understood it. Before I could stop it. My hand tightened slightly at my side, the cuff of my tailored coat brushing against the polished edge of the counter. Across the glass, reflections blurred. Mine, theirs, the whole room folding into one distorted image where nothing lined up the way it should. She shouldn't have had to ask that question. Not like that. Not in a place like this. Not in front of people who would forget her existence the second they walked out the door. I exhaled slowly, steady, controlled. The way I always do. But this time, it didn't settle anything. It just made the silence louder. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to do with it. I should have walked out. That is what men like me do when something does not belong to our world. We leave it behind, let it dissolve into the noise of smaller lives. But my feet did not move. Not right away. I watched as Emily guided Lily toward the door, her hand resting lightly on the girl's shoulder, like she was trying to protect something invisible from breaking. The bell above the entrance chimed softly when they stepped out into the cold, and for a moment, the warmth of the room felt wrong, like it did not deserve to exist without them in it. I glanced down at the table beside me, untouched food sitting there, still steaming, still more than enough. Too much. It always is. "Sir," the cashier's voice pulled me back. Careful. Respectful. The way people speak when they recognize something they cannot name but understand instinctively. I did not answer immediately. My eyes were still on the door, on the faint outline of 2 figures moving past the frosted glass. Small. Fading. "How much for everything on the menu?" I asked, my voice even, controlled, like this was just another transaction. The cashier blinked, confused. I am sorry. Everything." I repeated, finally turning to face him. "Every soup. Every sandwich. All of it. Right now." The room shifted. Conversations quieted, not because I raised my voice, but because I did not have to. That is how power works. It does not need to announce itself. It just exists, and people adjust. The cashier nodded quickly, fingers trembling slightly as he reached for the register. "Yes, sir. Of course." I slid my card across the counter without looking at the total. Numbers like that stopped meaning anything to me a long time ago. But today, they felt different. Not because of what I was spending, because of what it meant. I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice. "You will package it, distribute it. Anyone who walks in, they eat. No questions. No exceptions." He nodded again, faster this time. "Yes, sir." I paused, then added, quieter, sharper. And if a woman and a little girl come back, you do not let them pay. You do not make it a moment. You just serve them. Understanding flickered across his face. Not curiosity, not judgment, just compliance. Of course. I straightened, adjusting my cuff like nothing about this mattered more than the fabric of my sleeve. But it did, more than it should have. I stepped toward the door, pushing it open, the cold air hitting my face instantly, sharp and clean. The street stretched out in front of me, dim lights, passing cars, people moving without noticing anything beyond their own lives. I scanned the sidewalk once. Then again, no sign of them. They were already gone. Of course they were. People like Emily Carter do not linger. They disappear before anyone can decide to see them. I exhaled slowly, watching the breath leave me in a faint cloud. For a moment, I stood there, doing nothing. And that was the problem. I do not do nothing. Not ever. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I did not need to check it. I already knew what it would be. Schedules. Numbers. Decisions waiting to be made. A world that always moved when I told it to. I pulled it out anyway, staring at the screen for a second before making the call. Find her, I said simply when the line connected. No name. No explanation. I did not need to give one. There was a pause on the other end. Then, yes, sir. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my coat. The street felt different now. Quieter. Focused. Like something had shifted, even if no one else could see it yet. I looked down at my hand briefly. The same hand that had signed deals worth millions without hesitation, now remembering the faint sound of coins pressing against each other. $1.43. It should have been nothing, but it was not. It was a question, and I do not leave questions unanswered. I found her faster than I expected, not because she was easy to find, but because people like Emily Carter leave traces without knowing it. Rent overdue. Utility bills stretching past their limits. A part-time job that paid just enough to survive, not enough to breathe. Patterns. Everything leaves a pattern if you know where to look. I stood across the street the next morning, hands in my coat pockets, watching the building she walked out of. It was older than it should have been, brick faded, windows uneven, the kind of place that holds on just barely. She stepped out first, shoulders already tense like she was bracing for the day before it even started. Lily followed, her hand slipping into her mother's without hesitation, like that was the only safe place she knew. The girl was talking about something. I could not hear the words from this distance, but I could see the way her face lit up when she spoke. Children do that. They find light where there is not supposed to be any. Emily smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. It was practiced, controlled, the kind of smile you wear so the person next to you does not worry. I have seen that smile before, more times than I can count. A black car idled behind me, engine low, quiet, waiting. Sir, a voice said through the open window. We have the details. I did not turn. My eyes stayed on them as they started walking down the sidewalk, Lily's small steps matching her mother's faster pace. Go on, I said. Emily Carter, 28, works 2 jobs. Morning shift at a diner 3 blocks from here. Evening cleaning offices downtown. No criminal record. No debts outside of standard living expenses. A pause. She is struggling. The word lingered, like it was not enough to explain what I was seeing. It never is. And the child? I asked. Lily Carter, 6 years old. Enrolled in public school. Attendance is consistent. Consistent. That mattered. More than most people would understand. It meant Emily was still holding things together, even when everything else was slipping. I nodded once, more to myself than to him. Anyone bothering them? Another pause. Longer this time. No direct threats. But the landlord has filed notices. If payments are not made, he did not finish. He did not need to. I finally looked away, my gaze dropping briefly to the pavement before lifting again to where they had just turned the corner. Gone. Just like last night. But this time, I knew exactly where they were going. I reached into my coat and adjusted my cuff, the fabric smooth beneath my fingers, expensive, precise. A different world. One I built. One I control. And yet, somehow, it felt smaller than the one I had just watched walk away. Take care of the apartment, I said quietly. No eviction. No notices. Make it disappear. Yes, sir. And the diner, I added, my voice steady. She does not lose that job. Not because of anything. Understood. I stepped toward the car, then stopped, just for a second. The image of Lily holding those coins flickered in my mind again, Sharper now, clearer, not fading like it should have. I turned back slightly. And the school, I said. Lunch is covered. Quietly. Another pause. Then, of course. I got into the car without another word, the door closing with a soft, final sound. Inside, everything was controlled again. Temperature perfect. Silence complete. The world bending back into something I understood. But as the car pulled away, I found myself looking out the window, searching the sidewalks without meaning to. Not for danger. Not for threats. For them. Because something had already changed. And I had no intention of letting it go back. The first change came so quietly she almost missed it. Emily stood at the front counter of the diner, tying her apron tighter than necessary, the fabric worn thin from too many washes, too many shifts. The morning rush had not started yet, just the low hum of the coffee machine and the smell of something warm trying to pass for comfort. She glanced at the clock on the wall, then at the door, calculating time the way she always did. Minutes meant everything when your life ran on schedules that could not afford to slip. Hey, Emily. Her manager called from behind the counter, his tone different today. Softer, less impatient. She turned slightly, cautious. Yeah. He hesitated, like he was choosing his words carefully, which was not something he usually did. About your hours this week. I went ahead and added a few more shifts. Figured you could use them. Emily blinked. That was not normal. He had cut her hours just last week, said business was slow, said everyone had to adjust. Thank you, she said slowly, not fully trusting it. He just nodded and walked away, like it was no big deal. But it was. Everything was. She looked down at the schedule pinned to the wall, scanning her name written in ink across more spaces than before. More hours meant more money. More money meant breathing room. Just a little. And yet, something about it felt off. Like a door had opened without her touching it. Across the city, I watched the report come in on my desk, clean and simple, exactly how I prefer things. Adjustments made. No disruptions. No attention drawn. Efficient. Controlled. That is how change is supposed to happen. Invisible. Necessary. I set the paper down without reading it twice. I did not need to. I already knew what it said. What I did not know was why it still did not feel finished. My assistant stood across from me, waiting. The apartment is handled, he said. No further notices will be issued. I gave a slight nod. And the school. Lunch program updated. Anonymous donor. Of course. It always is. I leaned back in my chair, the leather quiet beneath me, the room around us still, insulated from everything outside it. This was my world. Predictable. Structured. Every piece exactly where I placed it. And yet, my mind was not here. It was somewhere else. A small hand holding coins. A voice asking a question no child should have to ask. Is there anything else, sir? He asked. I was silent for a moment, longer than usual. Then, no, I said finally. That will be all. He nodded and left, the door closing softly behind him. Alone again. I exhaled slowly, my gaze drifting to the window that overlooked the city, endless movement below, people crossing streets, cars stopping and starting, lives intersecting without ever truly touching. I have always understood how to move within that chaos, how to control it. But this was different. This was not control. It was something else. Something I had not planned. Back at the diner, Emily poured coffee into a chipped mug, her hands steady but her thoughts not. More hours. No warning. No reason. Good things do not just happen. Not like this. Not to people like her. She glanced at the door again as it opened, a rush of cold air slipping inside, carrying with it the scent of the street. For a second, her chest tightened, like she expected something or someone. But it was just another customer. Ordinary. Forgettable. The way life usually is. She forced herself to breathe, to focus, to keep moving. That is how you survive. You do not question the good. You take it. You hold on to it for as long as it lasts. Even if you know it might not last long. But somewhere deep down, beneath the routine, beneath the exhaustion, a quiet thought settled in. This was not luck. And if it was not luck, then someone was watching. And that meant everything was about to change. The second change did not arrive with a warning. It arrived in silence, the kind that settles into a place before anyone notices it has taken over. Emily pushed open the door to her apartment that evening, keys still cold in her hand, her body aching in the way that only comes from working too many hours on too little sleep. Lily slipped past her, dropping her small backpack by the couch, already talking about something that had happened at school, something bright and simple and far removed from the weight Emily carried. "Mom, today we had shoes off first," Emily said gently, her voice automatic, practiced, but softer than the world had been to her all day. She stepped inside fully, closing the door behind her, and that was when she noticed it. The envelope. It sat on the small table near the entrance, plain, unmarked, placed too neatly to be ignored. Emily froze for half a second, her fingers tightening slightly around her keys. She did not remember leaving anything there, and no one had a reason to come inside. No one had access. Her heart picked up, not fast, but enough to make her aware of it. "Mom," Lily's voice pulled her back. "What is it?" Emily forced her hand to relax, setting her keys down slowly, deliberately. "Nothing," she said, though her eyes never left the envelope. "Go wash your hands. I will start dinner." Lily nodded and disappeared into the small bathroom, humming something under her breath, unaware of the shift that had just entered their home. Emily waited until the sound of running water filled the space before she stepped forward. Each movement felt measured, like she was stepping into something she could not see yet. She picked up the envelope. It was light, too light to hold anything that could change her life. And yet, her pulse told her otherwise. She opened it carefully, sliding her finger under the seal, the paper giving way with a soft, quiet tear. Inside, there was no letter, no explanation, just a single sheet. A statement. Her eyes moved across the numbers once. Then again, slower this time. Rent paid. Not partially. Not delayed. Paid in full. Her breath caught. Just slightly. Enough to make her stop reading. Her mind tried to catch up, to find a reason, a mistake, something she could explain. But there was nothing. No name. No signature. Just proof that something impossible had already happened. Across the city, I stood by the window again, the city lights beginning to take over as the sun disappeared, the skyline shifting from gray to gold to something darker. "It is done," my assistant said quietly behind me. I did not turn. "She received it?" "Yes, sir." A pause. There were no complications. There never are when I decide there will not be. I nodded once, slow, controlled. "Good." But the word felt insufficient. Not because the task was incomplete, because the feeling was. I rested my hand lightly against the glass, cool beneath my palm, grounding, familiar. This is how I solve problems. Quietly, completely, no loose ends. And yet, this was not a problem. Not anymore. Back in that small apartment, Emily lowered the paper slowly, her fingers trembling now despite her effort to stay steady. This was not luck. This was not coincidence. This was intention. Someone had done this. For her. For them. And that meant one thing she could not ignore. Someone was close enough to see everything she had tried so hard to hide. Lily's footsteps approached, light and quick. "Mom, can we have soup tonight?" she asked, hopeful, unaware of the weight behind the word. Emily looked at her daughter, really looked this time, and something inside her shifted, deeper than fear, sharper than confusion. "Yeah," she whispered, her voice softer than it had been in a long time. "Yeah, we can." But as she folded the paper carefully, placing it back into the envelope, her eyes flicked once toward the door. Because somewhere out there, beyond the walls of her small, fragile world, someone had already stepped inside it without asking. And she had no idea who. Sleep did not come easy that night. Emily lay on the narrow bed beside the wall, staring at the faint cracks in the ceiling as shadows from passing cars slid across them, like quiet reminders that the world outside never stopped moving. The envelope sat on the small table across the room, untouched since she placed it there, but it felt louder than anything else in the apartment. She could hear it without hearing it, feel it without touching it. Lily slept beside her, small and still, one arm curled under her cheek, breathing soft and steady like nothing had changed. That was the part that mattered. That was always the part that mattered. Emily turned her head slightly, watching her daughter in the dim light, and for a moment, everything else faded. The fear, the questions, the quiet sense that something unseen had entered their lives. All of it softened in the presence of that small, fragile piece. But it did not disappear. It never does. Morning came too fast, like it always does when your mind refuses to rest. Emily moved through her routine with careful precision, each step familiar, each motion controlled. Coffee brewed, clothes laid out, Backpack packed. Normal. She needed normal. Mom. Lily's voice broke through the rhythm as she sat at the small table, swinging her legs slightly. Are we okay now? The question was simple. Too simple. Emily paused, her hand resting on the counter, fingers curling slightly against the worn surface. She turned slowly, meeting her daughter's eyes, and for a second, she did not have an answer. Not a real one. Because she did not know what okay meant anymore. Not after last night. Not after everything that had shifted without her permission. But Lily did not need the truth. She needed something stronger than that. We are getting there, Emily said softly, kneeling in front of her, adjusting a loose strand of hair behind Lily's ear. One step at a time, remember? Lily nodded, satisfied, because children believe in progress even when adults struggle to. They left the apartment together, the morning air crisp, the city already awake around them. Cars moved. People rushed. Life continued. But Emily felt it now. That subtle difference. Like the world had tilted just enough that she could not quite stand the same way she used to. Across the street, I watched them again. Same routine. Same path. But different. Not because they had changed. Because I had. She found the envelope. My assistant's voice came through the earpiece, low and controlled. I did not respond immediately. My eyes stayed on Emily as she adjusted Lily's jacket, pulling it tighter against the cold, her movements instinctive, protective. Her reaction? I asked finally. Cautious. Confused. No indication of rejection. I nodded slightly, more to the reflection in the glass of the car than to him. Of course she was cautious. That was the difference between her world and mine. In my world, things happen because I decide they do. In hers, nothing happens without a cost. And she was already searching for it. I stepped out of the car slowly, the door closing behind me with a quiet certainty that felt louder than it should have. The sidewalk stretched ahead, and for the first time, I did not stay in the distance. I moved forward. Not close enough to alarm. Not far enough to disappear. Just enough. Emily noticed. I saw it in the way her shoulders stiffened slightly, the way her gaze flicked in my direction without fully turning. Instinct. Awareness. She did not know who I was. But something in her understood that I did not belong to her world. Not yet. Lily, on the other hand, did not hesitate. She looked up at me directly, her small hand still wrapped around her mother's, her expression open, curious, unguarded. Children do not recognize danger the way adults do. They recognize presence. And I had already become one. I stopped a few steps away, close enough now that the distance between our worlds felt thinner than before. Not gone, but shifting. Emily turned fully this time, her eyes meeting mine, sharp, searching, unwilling to look away. And for a moment, neither of us spoke. Because some moments do not need words. They just need truth. And this was the moment she realized none of this had been random. She was the first to speak. Have we met? Emily's voice was calm, but there was tension beneath it, the kind that comes from someone who has learned to stay. Polite, even when something feels wrong. I held her gaze for a second longer than necessary, just enough to let her feel it, then shook my head slightly. No, I said. The word was simple. True, in the way that mattered. But not complete. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction, reading more into my silence than my answer. People like her do that. They have to. Then why are you looking at us? She asked, her hand tightening subtly around Lily's, pulling her a half step closer without making it obvious. Protective. Always. I noticed everything. I always do. Because I heard her, I said, nodding slightly toward Lily. That was enough. I saw the recognition hit. Not all at once, but in pieces. The diner. The question. The moment she thought no one important was listening. Her shoulders stiffened, and something flickered in her eyes. Not fear. Not exactly. Something sharper. Pride. We were fine, she said quickly, almost before I finished speaking. We did not need. She stopped herself, but it was too late. The implication hung there between us, unspoken but clear. I let the silence sit for a second, then tilted my head slightly. You were not fine, I said, not unkindly, just fact. Her jaw tightened. We managed. That word again. Managed. As if survival was something to be proud of instead of something that should never have been necessary in the first place. Lily looked between us, her small brows pulling together slightly, sensing the shift without understanding it. Mom, she whispered. Emily softened immediately, her grip loosening just enough to reassure her. It is okay, she said quietly, though her eyes never left mine. It was not okay. None of this was. And we both knew it. I reached into my coat slowly, deliberately, watching her reaction, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She did not. She stayed exactly where she was, every instinct telling her to be careful, but something deeper telling her not to run. I respected that more than she realized. I pulled out a simple card, nothing flashy, just a name and a number, and held it out. If anything changes, I said, my voice steady, controlled, you call. She did not take it immediately. Of course she did not. Her eyes dropped to the card, then back to me, searching, calculating. Why? She asked. That was the right question. Not what. Not how. Why? I almost smiled. Almost. Because you should not have to do this alone, I said. Not power. Not control. Just truth. For a second, something shifted in her expression, something softer, something she did not want to show. Then it was gone, replaced by that same careful strength. She reached out slowly and took the card, her fingers brushing mine just briefly, not enough to linger, but enough to register. Warm. Real. I do not accept help without understanding it, she said, her voice quieter now, more measured. Then do not call until you do, I replied. Simple. No pressure. No demand. That was the difference. I was not asking for anything in return. Not yet. Lily tugged gently on her sleeve. Mom, we are going to be late, she said, her voice small but certain. Emily nodded, her attention finally breaking from me as she glanced down at her daughter, grounding herself again in what mattered most. When she looked back at me, something had changed. Not trust. Not yet. But not rejection either. Something in between. Something that could become either, depending on what happened next. Thank you, she said finally, the words reluctant but real. I inclined my head slightly, acknowledging it without making it bigger than it needed to be. Then I stepped back, creating space again, letting the moment end on her terms. She turned, guiding Lily forward, their footsteps steady but not rushed this time. I watched them go, the card now in her hand, a small thing that carried more weight than it looked like it should. My phone buzzed in my pocket again, the world pulling at me, reminding me of everything else that demanded my attention. I ignored it, because for the first time in a long time, something else mattered more. Not power, not control, just a simple, quiet decision that had already begun to change everything. She did not call that day, or the next, and I expected that. Trust is not something you ask for from someone like Emily Carter. It is something you earn in silence, or not at all. But she kept the card. That was enough. I knew it before my assistant confirmed it, before any report crossed my desk. There are things you can feel without being told, and this was one of them. 3 days passed, and the city kept moving the way it always does, fast, indifferent, unforgiving. But her world was changing, piece by piece, adjustment by adjustment, every pressure point I could see being quietly lifted. The landlord stopped calling. The diner manager stopped watching the clock when she came in 2 minutes late. Even the small things shifted, like the way Lily walked into school with a lunch she did not have to question anymore. It should have been enough. It should have stayed distant, controlled, exactly the way I designed it. But it did not. Because distance only works when both sides agree to it. And she did not. I saw it in the way she started noticing patterns. In the way her eyes lingered longer on things that used to pass unnoticed. In the way she checked the envelope again, as if it might suddenly explain itself if she stared at it hard enough. She was getting closer to the truth. Not all of it. Just enough to realize it existed. And that was when the call came. I was in the middle of a meeting, voices around me discussing numbers that would have mattered yesterday, contracts that shaped outcomes I no longer found interesting. My phone lit up on the table, the number unfamiliar, but the pause in my chest told me exactly who it was before I even answered. I picked it up without excusing myself. Yes. Silence on the other end. Not empty. Careful. Measuring. Then her voice. I do not like things I cannot explain. Straight to the point. No hesitation. I leaned back slightly in my chair, ignoring the way the room had gone quiet, the way every conversation had stopped without anyone being told to stop. Most people do not, I said calmly. Another pause. I could hear it now, the faint background noise, traffic passing, the city wrapping around her the way it always does, too loud, too close. The rent, she said. The hours at work. The school. Each word precise. Controlled. She was listing evidence, not asking questions. You are connecting patterns, I replied. Not confirming. Not denying. Just meeting her where she stood. I am not asking for charity, she said, her voice tightening just slightly. There it was again. Pride. Strength. The refusal to be seen as someone who needed saving. I respected it. More than. She knew. Good, I said. Because I am not offering it. That stopped her. Completely. Silence stretched longer this time, but it was different now. Not cautious. Not defensive. Curious. Then what is this? She asked quietly. I stood up slowly, stepping away from the table, away from everything that used to define my decisions. I walked toward the window, looking out at the city below, the same streets she was standing on somewhere, the same world that had never been fair to her. It is correction, I said, of something that should never have happened in the first place. She exhaled softly, not quite understanding, but not rejecting it either. You do not even know me, she said. I know enough, I replied. Truth again. Not complete, but enough. Another pause. Then, softer now, less guarded than before. Why us? That was the question that mattered. The one that changes everything depending on how it is answered. I closed my eyes for half a second, the image of Lily holding those coins rising again, clear, unshakable. Because she asked a question no child should ever have to ask, I said quietly. And this time, there was no hesitation. No distance. Just truth. On both sides of the line, everything shifted. And neither of us could go back to what this was before. The line stayed quiet after I said it, but it was not empty anymore. It held something heavier now, something that neither of us could pretend did not exist. On the other end, Emily did not speak right away. I could hear her breathing, slow, controlled, the way someone steadies themselves when the ground beneath them shifts and they refuse to fall. You heard her, she said finally, softer than before, not questioning it anymore, just accepting it. I did. My voice did not change. It did not need to. The truth has a way of settling into silence without effort. Another pause. Then, that does not give you the right to step into our lives. There it was. The boundary. Clear. Firm. Necessary. I respected it. More than she expected. You are right, I said. No argument. No pressure. Just acknowledgement. That caught her off guard more than anything else I could have said. I could hear it in the way her breath hitched slightly, in the way the silence shifted again, uncertain now, not defensive. Then why are you still here? She asked. And this time, there was no edge to it. Just confusion. Real, honest confusion. I looked out at the city again, the lights stretching endlessly, each one a life, a story, a decision waiting to be made. Because leaving would mean pretending I did not hear her, I said quietly. And I do not pretend. The words settled between us, simple, unpolished, but heavier than anything else I had offered so far. On her side of the line, something changed again. Not resistance, not surrender, something in between. Understanding, maybe, or the beginning of it. I do not want to owe anyone anything, she said after a moment, her voice steadier now, grounded in something she trusted. You do not, I replied immediately. No hesitation, no condition, just truth. Then what happens next? She asked. That was the question, the one that moves everything forward or stops it completely. I let a second pass before answering, not because I did not know, but because this was the first time it mattered how I said it. Nothing you do not choose, I said. Your life stays yours. I do not take that. Silence again. But this time, it was different. Not heavy, not sharp, just quiet. Like something fragile had been placed between us, and neither of us wanted to break it by moving too fast. I could hear Lily in the background now, faint, asking her mother something about dinner, about something small and ordinary, something that should always have been small and ordinary. Emily let out a soft breath, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed. Just slightly. Enough. There is a place, she said. A small diner. The one from that night. I already knew it, but I let her say it. We go there sometimes now, she continued. Because it feels different. Of course it did. I had made sure of that, but I did not say it. Tomorrow, she added, quieter now, like she was testing the weight of the decision as she spoke it. Around 6. An invitation. Not direct, not certain, but real. I felt something shift in my chest, something unfamiliar, something I did not try to name. I will be there, I said. No hesitation, no condition, just presence. The call ended shortly after, not abruptly, not formally, just naturally, like both of us understood that nothing else needed to be said right now. I lowered the phone slowly, my reflection staring back at me from the glass, unchanged on the surface, but something deeper no longer aligned the way it used to. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock. A simple time, a simple place, but I knew better than to call it simple, because this was no longer about a moment, or a question, or even a decision. This was something else now, something that had already begun, whether either of us was ready for it or not. And for the first time in a long time, I was not trying to control what came next. I was just showing up,